Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson, Director of Museum Collections and Curator here at the Buffalo Naval Park. And for today's video, this was a correspondence I had with someone that had been visiting the park. And he asked me a question of, where did that model of the USS Tonawanda go? And that was in our hangar building. And we decided to redesign our hangar building right when I started, about 2018, late 2018 into early 2019. And one of the things that we had to do was to remove all of the artifacts that were in there. I had actually forgotten about this particular model, but that was the background. So he said, where did that model go? And that led me down the path of doing a little more research into the USS Tonawanda. We've already talked about in prior video about Buffalo, especially during World War II. Using the city as a namesake just did not work out very well, especially for the cruisers, Fargo class and Cleveland class, and but Tonawanda. All right, and I will talk about that a little bit. There are plenty of names in here, and this then gets to a larger conversation about monitors. Right? I used the Friedman book about battleships because he has a nice small addenda in the back about monitors, so that's what I used for the research for this. As you can imagine with monitors, the names could potentially even be foreign to us today, so I'm going to try my best to make sure I pronounce everything okay. So we'll begin. It's a PowerPoint. Hope you enjoy. It's a short little thing, but it's interesting. At least I hope you find it is. So let's see here. All right, USS Tonawanda, and then a little bit about the Civil War monitors themselves. So what are monitors? All right, monitors are low and slow ships. They're low in the waterline, and they're slow, meaning 8 to 10 knots. But they possess guns well above the rate for the ship's construction. All right, and if you kind of go down that rabbit hole, you will find some fascinating photos, even like coastal monitors into World War II with, smaller craft, 150, 250 feet, but then, with a 15 or 16-inch gun on it. Pretty astounding stuff. So if you find that interesting, you can go down that rabbit hole too. The construction, they're made of iron or wood, armored hull above the waterline. They sat really low in the water, with most of the machinery being under the waterline. And then certainly when we think of a monitor, and you just have those pictures in your head of a monitor, there might be 20, 30 inches above the water line. And sometimes it was just armored, or sometimes it was armored and then it had wood planking around it as well for extra protection. The monitors were born out of the need to protect ships better once the exploding shell was developed. So it's not just a penetrating shell, it actually would make contact and then explode. So usually the large guns were in turrets which rotated, all right, and they were mostly used for coastal riverine duties. So the concept was first started by the Stevens brothers. All right, it's Robert L. and Edwin A. Stevens in 1941. They came up with a concept called the Stevens Battery. But if you do the research into that, it's just delay after delay, running out of money, spending their own money. They were getting congressional approval. Especially this was after the War of 1812, and we were still had a tense relationship with Britain and Canada, even after the conclusion of the War of 1812. So these two brothers set to develop what we would now know as a monitor, But there were just so many delays. One was started, it was delayed, and then it was just eventually scrapped. So they worked on Stevens Battery over the course of 15 or 20 years. The first one that we kind of think of and is now generalized to all ships is the Monitor. So if we take a look, there's an image of the Monitor. It's an inboard profile image. 990 tons, 179 feet in length, 41 feet beam, 10-foot draft. They used two 11-inch Dahlgren smoothbore guns or cannons. And they had twin fire tube boilers that created 40 pounds per square inch. All right, so that was a very early steam boiler where they would run water through piping, heated water through piping in a bath of water, which would then create the steam. That led to a vibrating lever steam engine, which was a trunk engine that was cut in half to save space. And they had the two cylinders on either side powering one crankshaft, and therefore they had one 9-foot prop. There were succeeding classes after the Monitor, all for the Civil War. Of course, there was a lot of river actions, especially in the South. All those, the need to protect harbors and rivers, river entranceways, and ports, things like that. So they hugged the coastline, so to speak. So there was the Passaic. Sorry, I know that's named after a region in New Jersey, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. So you see, U.S. Monitor was 990 tons. Now we're getting up to 1335 tons, 200 feet length, 46 beam, 10-foot draft. The Canonicus class, again, sorry, I would say Canonicus. Look at that growth in terms of just the overall long tonnage and displacement. 2,100 tons, an extra 35 feet in length. Shorter beam, though, all right, from the prior class, and a 13-foot draft. The Casco class, that was a whole series of light draft monitors. They were constructed. They were absolutely, completely unseaworthy, and I do have a picture of that. And the subsequent scandal, which led to the firing of the chief naval engineer, a guy by the name of Albin Steimers, because he approved these designs, and they just were not good. And all 20, if I remember right, all 20 were constructed. Then you have the Mian to Nomoa class. Right, that's 3,400 tons, 250 feet in length, 53 beam, 15-foot draft. And there were 4 constructed, and the last one was the USS Tonawanda. So that's what we'll focus on, is this class itself. Now, some of these classes had twin 11 Dahlgrens. Some had one 11 or two 11s and one 15 or two 15s. And some then just had 2 twin 15 cannons, like the USS Tonawanda. Now you see there it says classes based on duties, harbors, coasts, or seagoing. All right, that's very similar to aircraft. When aircraft is constructed, a lot of times the variant of a certain kind of airplane is based on the duty that it will do. And you'll find that here as well with the monitors. So here is the USS Tonawanda. The biggest thing is that single smokestack coming out of the middle of the ship. Then you can see the two turrets. They each had 2 15 Dahlgren smoothbore cannons in them. Now here's a picture of the USS Chimo and the USS Tonawanda. USS Tonawanda is on the right. The Chimo is one of those Casco classes that created the scandal where Chief Naval Engineer Steimers lost his job. All right, they were meant to be light. So if you think of if you think in terms of cruisers, you got heavy cruisers, light cruisers. All right, this was the same thing. Say the class that the USS Tonawanda one was in could be considered a heavy. This class was a light, and you can see the design differences there. Now, why USS Tonawanda, and why am I covering that? Well, because Buffalo and Western New York has the Tonawanda River, or the Tonawanda Creek, which this ship was named after. Here's a great picture. Of course, it wouldn't be Buffalo if you didn't show snow. So just feeding into your preconceptions here, everybody. So it's a 90-foot tributary that leads from the outer edge of Western New York near Rochester, 90 miles, connects with the Ellicott Creek, which then leads into the Buffalo River. So that's interest to me, and hopefully to you as well. So she was equipped with a vertical Martin boiler system to save space. And since it was vertical, that's why you see that taller stack that I showed earlier. If you look at prior monitor classes, their smokestack is not that tall, so to speak. It was equipped with 2 propellers. All right, there were 150 officers and enlisted guys on board, which surprised me. And of course, as I've mentioned, they had the 2 twin 15-inch Dahlgren guns in the 2 turrets, fore and aft. Her service isn't swashbuckling, I will say. All right, she was the last one of the 4 Me Antinomas to be constructed. She was constructed for the Civil War, didn't see any action. She was put into commission well after, as you can see, on the 12th of October, 1865 at the Philadelphia Navy Shipyard. She was decommissioned just a couple of months later. She was recommissioned about a year after her original commissioning, and she became a training ship at the U.S. Naval Academy, which is nice to know. I think by then the U.S. Navy Academy had been open for about 25 years, early 1840s. And eventually she was renamed the Amphitrite. Right? And if you know about crossing the line ceremonies, you'd learn about the goddess Amphitrite. She was decommissioned for good, though, in 1872. So no action. Worked as a training vessel in the U.S. Navy Academy, and then taken out of commission in 1872. All right. How about this? We have that stately-looking guy, George Robeson. This was kind of a mini scandal as well that I found interesting. So given post-war sentiment, military branches were certainly not flush with funding from Congress after the American Civil War. Switching to peacetime Navy, the monitors were not really equipped for peacetime duty. A couple of those is traveling to foreign ports and goodwill tours, establishing trade routes. One of the Me Antinomas did travel to Europe, but they were under tow for a lot of that. So to be in one of these crossing the Atlantic on your own would be quite harrowing, I think. So without much money, you want to build new ships. What did the Secretary of the Navy, George Robeson, do? He devised a scheme to get money from Congress for repairs to this 4-ship class. What it actually was that he actually broke them up. That was the repair. He actually broke the ships up, used that money allocated for the repair from Congress, and then used the money from selling off the scrap iron and scrap equipment to build a whole new class. That's pretty, I like that. It's a little devious, but he got the job done. And so he built 4 new monitors, again, under the guise of repairing the original 4. So again, he scraps them. He has a pot of money from Congress for the repairs. He gets them scrapped. He uses that money along with the repair money to then construct 4 new ones. Well, and that's where I'll end the story. Certainly it can continue, but hope you enjoyed this little look. There was a fish lay. There was a net laying ship called the USS Tonawanda as well during World War II. So that's interesting, right? That they certainly different classes of ships are named after tributaries, rivers, lakes, ports, things like that. So when you capital ships, as we know, where their names come from, and then even into the classes, the cruisers and the destroyers. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this little look into the USS Tonawanda, a little bit about the creek, and a little bit about monitors as well, from Stevens Battery up through 1865 and 1866. All right. Please subscribe, ring the bell, get notifications, leave a comment. Thank you, as always, for your support, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.